Welcome back to Arise Primetime, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Aniegolo. Now let's further enrich our perspectives and explore some of the issues covered on the program today with our guest contributor, who brings his depth and breadth of analysis to various subjects. And for this, I'm joined now in the studio by Arise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper, Mahmood Jega. Thank you very much indeed, Mahmood. Good to see you.
Thank you.
What do you make of what Professor Patu Tomi was saying? Because at first I thought he was going to be talking about how he's planning to put the mega party together as one of the promoters of it. But then he kind of veered off on a different tangent.
He veered off. What he has in mind, as he explained, is much more profound, much more methodical than that. And he was apparently taken aback that the media simplified matters by saying it is an attempt to form a mega political party. And throughout Nigeria's political history, we have had mergers and alliances and mega parties. In the First Republic, we had NNA, we had OPGA. In the Second Republic, we had PPP, even though it was not registered by FEDECO. And then more recently, in 2013, we had APC, which was about 4 political parties coming together. But what Prof is saying is that that is not the solution. And he quoted, I think, Dr. Kayode Fayemi as saying that Nigerians should not have faith in the political class or the political parties to save them from the situation that we find ourselves in. So in short, the idea is to build a completely new political culture through a movement, and within that, a political party could emerge. Now, obviously, it is very difficult. He said it too. Could take a very long time. Certainly, if you are talking about 2027,
Well, that's what everybody is talking about,
which is just 3 years away, the shortest cut would be to find a way among the existing political structures.
Even if not a merger, an alliance, yeah.
Because you don't even have 3 years. I mean, in the next 2 years,
Absolutely.
You should better have the platforms that will contest the 2027 election. But if what you want to do is a very profound shake-up, as Prof is saying, then probably you shouldn't be thinking of 2027 or even 2031 after that, because this one will take a very long...
Yeah, it's almost like going to primary school and educating children and giving them a completely new culture.
That is true, and my own thinking as he was talking was that, well, he is basically an academic and entrepreneur. I don't know whether this is the best method to get such a movement going. Throughout our history and in many other parts of Africa and the world, it is great leadership that begins movements.
Absolutely.
If you have a man, let's say like the Mahatma Gandhi, or like Nelson Mandela, or Kwame Nkrumah, or even here in Nigeria, if you have a man like Chief Awolowo who exhibited values that people found to be inspiring, then people coalesce around him, and before you know it, you have got a movement. But if it is slow, methodical education, well, it's good, but it will take a much longer
Yeah, it definitely
time.
will take. And Nigerians don't have, are not quite, they don't have that amount of patience right now, because they want immediate
results,
change, and they can see the potential for that in 2027. So let's talk about that aspect of it, because it seems as if there are two things here. The one that he's talking about, but also the ones that we're hearing about, where the parties are talking to each other and trying to form some kind of either an alliance or a merger or that sort of thing. I wonder what your thoughts are on that after seeing the Labour Party and the PDP, for example, immersed in such a fractious process within their own parties. I mean, what kind of message of unity does that send to Nigerians?
Well, it is true. Whatever you do in the political terrain, you can't take everybody along. Because, for example, in PDP now, there is this big fight, as we read in the papers, between the Atiku group and the Wike group. And the two factions are unlikely to move together. One of them that probably loses the struggle for the control of the party is likely to bail out, because for all practical purposes, Nyesom Wike and this group are APC people now. In fact, in Rivers State, all the 27 assembly members who support him have actually crossed over to APC.
The APC, yeah.
So really, what he is doing is to cause friction in PDP and be able to take a large chunk and go out. Okay, so the chunk that is left behind, probably led by Atiku Abubakar or some other leader if they produce, the biggest block that they are looking at will be the Labour Party, led by Peter Obi, and possibly also the NNPP, led by Rabiu Kwankwaso, as well as some other
maybe the SDP and people like that. Although those parties say that nobody is talking to them.
Maybe because they are very small, but by the time you are trying to build a big coalition, you probably must talk to them. But then that is where the problem of leadership struggles will come in. Professor Utomi, of course, is saying in this new movement we are trying to create, let's not even talk about leadership. Let's talk about building the cadres and the values and the new culture. Fine, that takes a long time. But obviously, if you are talking about 2027, which the mainstream politicians are talking about, the mainstream politicians in PDP and LP and NNPP, you can't run away from the issue of who will lead. In any case, that was what brought the friction in the first place. That was what brought the friction. Mr. Peter Obi was a PDP member. He was running in the PDP primaries. When he probably saw that he was unlikely to make headway and win, then he left, went to the Labour Party, created a very large movement of his own. Wike also was a presidential candidate in PDP. When he didn't win, then he began playing this game of one leg here. And even Rabiu Kwankwaso also left PDP and went and formed NNPP. Also, it was the leadership. So even now, if you try to bring all those groups together, the first issue will be, okay, who will lead?
Absolutely.
Yeah, who will lead?
And there is that fact. I mean, that's a good point you make, but there's also that inescapable fact, which is that according to Nigerian law, you must run for president or for office through a political party.
You must.
So you can't actually get away from it.
You can't get away from it. You have to be, and the parties also have their own rules. For example, several of the parties have rules that you cannot contest the primaries unless you have been a fee-paying member of the party for some years, even though they have an escape clause, what they call waiver. Especially if you come with money or with a lot of support, then the party executive will give you a waiver even if you enter last year. Otherwise, Mr. Peter Obi will never have been the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. Yes.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating thing. And I think the key point that you make here is in a situation of a potential merger, who will be the leaders of this new super party? That's the key question.
That's the key question. Well, anyways, because, you can say, some will argue, every side will put forward the argument that favors it. For example, one side will say, well, just let's look at the results of the last election. I got more votes than you got. But it is not just that, because it is also important to say, okay, but who is likely to keep the coalition together? We saw that, for example, in the MPN in 1978. They said, look, our coalition is very big,
very brief,
nationwide, and we need a person who is not too assertive, who looks harmless to most components. So we put him forward as the leader, and that's how you end up with Araisho Shagari, for example.
It's a fascinating thing, isn't it? And great analysis there. Thank you very much indeed. Mahmood Jega is a Arise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye. Thank you.